Today on the Dragon Boys of Summer, finally, we get a chance to rip through time as we get to talk Deadpool and Wolverine. We're going to have a spoiler-filled discussion, and we brought together our Marvel and movie dream team to do so. Plus, we'll give our thoughts, hopes, and predictions as we head towards the final two episodes of House of the Dragon Season 2. Guys, a very special episode and a lot to discuss, so we're not going to beat around the bush here. We're going to get right to it, and first off, joining me is a man with 206 bones in his body, 207 if he's watching Gossip Girl. It is the one and only Tom of the Pop Cut Pod. Tom, you're very welcome back to Page 180. Big Gossip Girl fan.
You lost me so quickly. But yeah, sure. No, yeah, I love Gossip Girl.
There, Tom's not picking up on the quotes of the movie. This is going to go well.
No, no.
The reference is already shoot. Brilliant, good stuff. And also joining me, his superpower is parallel parking. It is the one and only. That should have played music. There should have been music there. I swear to God, I had music lined up. We're gonna do this right because we don't get a chance. We haven't got a chance to do this in a long time. So, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Dan Lynham. Dan Lynham, our Marvel expert. You're very welcome back to Page 180. Dan, it's been too long since we got to discuss anything MCU. I think the last time, what was it? No, we discussed Loki. I was thinking Secret Invasion. We went through a trauma bond of sorts last year doing Secret Invasion. So
yeah, trauma dump. Just everything that was going wrong in the world right now, we were blaming on Marvel and Nick Fury. It was like. I think back on that quite fondly though because of our chats, which is what you said was always the point of this. But yeah, just where how far things had fallen at the time. But maybe there's a slight sign of a rise here. We shall see.
Hopefully. And that was the hope with this movie, and that's what we're going to discuss. And I think what's interesting is we'll have a lot to discuss because I don't think we got a conclusive answer here, because I think what we wanted to do was come on and go, the MCU saved, we're back, everything's sorted, this is what's going to happen. And I think we have a lot to discuss. We're going to get into this, guys. If you're listening here, if you're getting this far and you haven't seen Deadpool and Wolverine and you care about spoilers, stop what you're doing. Go away, watch the movie. We're going to be spoiling all of it here. So come back to us when you've watched the movie. If you don't care about spoilers, that's your choice, but do not at me because you are going to get everything spoiled. We're going to talk about it all. But before we get into the actual discussion and what we thought, I want to kind of get a feel, because what I love about these type of movies is the experience of it and the ceremony around it. Where kind of like, I went to a midnight screening, for example. I've seen it twice now. I went to see a midnight screening on Wednesday night, and then I went on Thursday afternoon and I watched it in 3D just because I wanted to kind of get a vibe. I wanted to see how audiences were reacting, and I tend to, when we're reviewing things, watch it twice. What was interesting was, for me, the midnight screening was really, as you'd expect, it was quite full, not completely, but very bought in fans. Every joke was landing, every little reference. Then I went to see it in 3D. And again, that might say something for the type of, I don't know if that's a comment on the type of cinema goer you're going to get, but a lot of the things weren't landing. And it was also only about half full, which, again, when you consider that this is kind of the movie that a lot of cinemas are relying on it to save cinema, is worrying for me anyway. I don't know. I want to get just a check-in for your guys' experiences. Dan, how did you watch this? What was the vibe like? Did you watch 2D, 3D, whatever? What was your experience of Deadpool and Wolverine?
So our usual thing is either to go the IMAX or the iSense in Blanchardstown, and go as early as possible. So with a few things in the way, yesterday we went to see it at the 5:15 showing. We were there pretty early. This point they didn't have any gnarly cups. They only had gnarly popcorn things. It's always a thing for me. But we did get the Wolverine and Deadpool keyrings because both myself and Kelly are a pair of saps. I of course got the Wolverine one. Hair. But no, the whole cinema experience was actually quite enjoyable. It seemed like, I would say, very casual fans. And the cinema was maybe 3/4 full, which, like you said, I kind of thought was a little discerning. There was a lot of Wolverine t-shirts, a lot of Deadpool t-shirts. To throw a spanner in the works to be a total troll, I wore, of course, one of my Lady Death t-shirts to see any like little mark was like, she's not in the movie. It's the wrong character, asshole. I was really waiting for interaction. Never came, unfortunately.
Fair. Okay. And like kind of reference wise, were people picking up on much? Were they
Yeah,
getting kind of a lot of okay, good.
all the jokes were landing, and I could hear, as I was, like the odd, "Psh, that's that character."
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a fan experience for me, and
Okay.
it did add to the overall viewing
Oh,
adventure.
okay, that's kind of the sense check for how it's landing in Dublin. Tom, you obviously saw it down in Cork. How's everything kind of landing down there?
I saw afternoon screening yesterday, Thursday. And the cinema I had was kind of odd because they didn't announce the midnight screening, so the earliest screening for ages was this showing.
Mm.
So then they announced the midnight screening. I was like, could have gone to the midnight screening, which I probably would have fallen asleep, so it's probably for the best. Um, it was fairly full. Um, I did notice like a couple of Deadpool Wolverine kind of t-shirts going into it. I also saw one fairly young child watching the movie, and I had in front of me as I was going in, two children got blown out for not having ID. Um, so
Yeah.
that's that old chestnut, which also I remember when I saw the second Deadpool movie, I was sitting down at one stage, and after like the first 2 minutes, a man just walked out with his child. Yeah, I think that I kind of felt like I was more in tune with the jokes and the meta humor than a lot of the audience here. I think there was less laughter than I expected. And I don't know, was that a case of the audience not being hip to it or just not finding it entertaining? I don't know. I think it might have colored my enjoyment of the film a little bit, but I might go see this again at the weekend and see if there's a more kind of clued in crowd. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's really interesting because like you'd expect that the midnight show, and they're there, they've stayed up. There was a similar thing for me. It was like the 1:30 hump I had to get around, and I was just like I could feel myself going, and I'm like, no, I'm not going. I'd pledged myself. I'm like, I'm not pissing and I'm not napping. Like I'm watching, I'm sitting, I'm raw dogging this. Like whatever happens, I'm doing it. But there was like a lot of buy-in. But then like because I'd been to the midnight show on the night before, I knew where the laughs were. And like I'm waiting for the laughs that just didn't come at some things. And I'm like, I know that's funny because it got a laugh. So for me, it was like I just saw that as not understanding it. And it did actually frame my enjoyment of the movie because I was like, I enjoyed the first side of it, but I'm bought in. Like I've watched
Yeah.
I've watched every episode of X-Men, like the animated series. We covered X-Men 97 on this show. I've watched all the old Fox movies as well in the run up to this. Except for a few that showed up there I wasn't expecting to be included. But so I'm bought in, like, and kind of part of my prep for this was like also reading Joanna Robinson's excellent MCU The Reign of Marvel Studios book as well. So I'm like big into the studio. We have this podcast, so I'm gonna get everything. But again, like it was just like, is this too navel gazing? Is this, and listening to some reviews, the reviews I've listened to aren't the reviews like we're gonna discuss, the fan reviews. They're the critics reviews, and that's what people are saying. Like people are talking about this as kind of like they've run out of gas here. They're kind of going over the corpse of it. And I don't take that too seriously because that's not who this is for. You know what I mean? And people are going to see it regardless of it. It's not important, and I feel like I can reference that. But was it a bit navel gazing, and did it go over, some fans said? I think that's something that we need to consider and should be a part of it. But before we get into kind of our thoughts on it, and don't worry, we're getting to it, guys. We're going to get into, as we always do, the alt recap, put you back into the mindset of what exactly happened in the movie, and then we're going to break it all down for you. So we're going to get underway now. And guys, before we begin with an alt recap, I have to say, it is near impossible to do one of these for a Deadpool movie when Ryan Reynolds himself is doing an alt recap as the movie is taking place. It is ridiculous. We open on Deadpool desecrating the emotional ending of Logan by digging up his rotten corpse. He uses weapons against the TVA agents, hunting him to the point where he gets Wolverine's claws stuck in a human centipede type situation with two different agents. A nice gentle entry into the MCU then. To explain all this, we flash back to Happy Hogan, the other guy, doesn't do cameos, rejecting Deadpool from the Avengers, which led to him going back to his own universe where he works with Peter as a car salesman. Vanessa had left him. He was back living with Blind Al, and the TVA interrupted his surprise birthday party to take him in. He's still friends with X-Men, but it's still Colossus. So basically, he's a bum. There at the TVA, he meets Paradox, aka the Tom DeLorean, who tells him that he's been recruited to help speed up the destruction of his universe, which was put into motion upon the death of its anchor being in Logan, which, if you're like me, got you thinking about who would be our universe's anchor being. And it got really depressing when you realize it's either Donald Trump or, best case scenario, Taylor Swift. Wade refuses and goes on the hunt for a replacement Logan instead, and after a montage featuring a bunch of Logan variants and the Hulk, they didn't splash out for Mark Ruffalo's face, mainly because they'd spent it on Henry Cavill. He eventually finds the most depressed Logan of all in a bar. Paradox rejects his alternative solution and prunes them, sending them to a very Mad Max style void featuring the remnants of the 20th Century Fox logo. Logan and Deadpool brawl until it's interrupted by a familiar voice to Marvel fans, Chris fucking Evans. Unfortunately for him and us, he's not capped this time. He is in fact the Human Torch, so he's promptly and viciously killed by the leader of the Void and twin sister of Charles Xavier, Cassandra Nova, who is our big bad henceforth. Our heroes narrowly escape the Goliath and run into Wade variants, Nicepool and Dogpool, who give them a car where the two fight after it comes out that Deadpool made an educated wish that he could save Logan's universe. I once made an educated wish that I'd be married with children on my 37th birthday instead of sitting alone at midnight screening in a Deadpool and Wolverine t-shirt. These things tend not to pan out. After the fight, the pair are found unconscious by a Void Rebel force of sorts containing Elektra, Blade, Gambit, and X-23, now just going by Laura. An Avengers-style team you could only find in a Void, sure, but it was cool nonetheless. As Logan confesses to Laura that he was responsible for the X-Men and his universe's demise because he was getting pissed, they decide to team up and take on Nova to try get home. While Blade and Co handle Nova's army, Deadpool and Wolverine confront her and use Juggernaut's helmet to negate her powers. Pyro attempts to double cross and shoot her, and Logan shows mercy, saying that Charles wouldn't want to watch her die, saving her life, so she relents and lets them go home via Marvel Sparkle Circle. Pyro tells her that he did it because Paradox broke the long-standing TVA Void agreement, so she gets back at him by planning to use the Time Ripper to destroy every universe outside the Void. To distract Deadpool and Wolverine from stopping her, she brings in the Deadpool Corps, led by Lady Deadpool, who Marvel fans today will say is cool now that they know it's secretly Blake Lively, but would instantly review bomb if she ever got her own solo movie. What she didn't plan for was Wade using Nicepool, who awkwardly doesn't have regenerative powers, as a human shield, and foiling Cassandra's plan to destroy all timelines. Fortunately, their combined regenerative power and box office appeal, apparently, though we'll see about that, meant that they survived. Hunter B-15 took Paradox into custody. Deadpool finally got to celebrate properly with his found family, while Logan found a new universe to hang out in. Technically, not a single thing changed the MCU timeline, but Fox's universe had one hell of a big final day out. And a touching tribute was played to the Fox movies over the credits, which also showed Deadpool proved that it wasn't his fault that Johnny Storm got Human Torch. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Deadpool and Wolverine. Anyway, that's what happened, guys. That's how we got here. Let's get into it. This came in as the only MCU movie released this year in the big screen. This is carrying all of the MCU's hopes and dreams and the way forward. They even acknowledged in this movie, Logan, you're coming in at a very difficult time. Did this save the MCU? Did this live up to the hype? What were your thoughts on this movie, Tom? We'll start with you.
Definitely didn't save the MCU. Kind of felt like a bit of a stopgap almost. It felt like, I don't know, and I hate using this word in a review because it often comes off as very transparent when I say this movie was fun. I was entertained and I thought the cameos are pretty good. It's funny and it's very meta, I would say, more so than even the others. The problem is I thought the story was just cat. It wasn't very good. Once you recover from like the surprise it returns, there's not a lot to it. It's, I would say, the least accessible of the Deadpool movies. Jerry, you know I'm a big man for analogies, and sometimes they go somewhere and sometimes they don't. So here's my analogy, right? My favorite superhero movie, Jaws. Of course, we all wanted to be Jaws growing up, didn't we? Yeah, he's a superhero, right? Look, who didn't want to be Jaws?
Yeah.
Eating naked ladies and going to the beach. That's the life. Um, um, but like when Spielberg made that movie, the shark was broken, and he worked within those limitations, and it made the movie better. And I think there's a certain part of that in Deadpool. Now that it seems like there's a lot less off the table, I feel like it kind of leaned into some of its worst impulses as far as, hey, look at this, hey, meta humor, blah blah blah. I feel like I've known someone who hasn't watched any of the Marvel movies, and they watched the first Deadpool movie, and they're like, oh, that's good. I actually enjoyed it. And they were like, you might enjoy the second Deadpool movie. I'm like, you can't see this one. I don't think you can watch this movie without like knowing all the stuff. And it's not like, hey, remember this Marvel movie all the time. Sometimes it's like, hey, remember this very specific thing that happened that we tried to make happen and never happened. It's like, who is that for? I think it's enjoyable. I don't think it's going to stand the test of time. I think, in fact, even by like the time the next Marvel movie comes out, we'll have forgotten this. And that's a shame. There's a lot of good redeeming stuff in it. This sounds incredibly harsh. I was kind of surprised at the tone of it. It's like a kind of a surprisingly nice swan song to the Fox Marvel movies, which I wasn't expecting. I think a lot of people kind of expected like Deadpool kills the Fox universe. And it's not that. And that's kind of fun. And I should have guessed that because Kevin Feige was involved in like all those movies as a producer early on. Like that's how he got his job in the industry. He was the assistant to Lauren Shuler Donner and then got a producer credit because he knew the X-Men so well. So I was kind of surprised by that. I think what's more interesting is what they left off the table here. And I think that's something we want to talk about when we talk about like the future of the MCU. Of course, we're at Comic-Con weekend and we'll have a better idea after this weekend of maybe what the future holds for the MCU. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I don't think it's a game changer. I don't think it's a savior for Marvel. It's very much niche and kind of inside baseball. And I think that's kind of unfortunate. There's stuff that plays to a wider audience, but overall, I think it's something we're probably going to forget about in retrospect in a couple of years and maybe reflect on a bit more harshly. I also want to say I think the reason I didn't get the Gossip Girl quote is I missed like the first 2 minutes of this movie because I was waiting for those teenagers to get out of the way. I picked it up from context afterwards. I was like, oh yeah, Bones, he dug up Wolverine. Yeah. So that's why I'm not that bad. The memory isn't gone yet. Okay.
to actually be able to retroactively put together the quote without having seen it is very impressive. Like that.
There we go. Just to be clear, I'm not that bad.
A high movie IQ, like so. Fair play, Tom. I respect that. He got the reference without seeing it. That's really impressive. You saved it big time. Dan, obviously we've been talking about X-Men all year on the show, and we've been kind of talking about our hopes and dreams leading into this. Big Marvel fan, and we've obviously had many conversations about it. It's the hope that kills you sometimes, and we'll always keep coming back no matter what. But there is a lot wrapped up in this. What were your thoughts on how they delivered and executed?
I completely agree with pretty much everything that Tom said. It was fun. It was very niche. But I think it reframed what they meant by save the MCU, which in this case was we need something that's not going to flop. And having worked in like, kind of several of the kind of like nerdy industries, like what I'm doing right now, people spend a decent amount of money. When I was involved with wrestling fans are quick to part with their cash, but I have never seen any community as quick to drop money as the comic book community when I worked in comic book stores. They will just throw money at you because they're all losers with no life and they're just like computer programmers and engineers and tech heads. Like that's what I was myself. They have money.
Same.
They don't have girlfriends. They barely have a place to live, but they do have shelves full of expensive plastic shit.
Yeah, there we go. Everyone pointing to themselves. Hold on, I'll just take off my
That's what you can see.
I'll just take off my background so I feel like I'm missing out, not showing my shelf. No, I'm not going to do it. It's grand. You've seen my shelf before.
But yeah, so like
it's damning that we all have shelves.
No, you have to get your shelves in order. This was just, I think, aimed at those guys knowing that they were going to drop money on it because they're like, I get that joke. I own X-Men 251. I have that cover here. So like that sort of thing. And if that's what they were trying to do, I mean, look, you're saying, Gerald, already, you've been back to see it twice. Tom, you've seen it once, you said it, you're going to see it again? That was the plan?
Just the once. I might go see it again, all right.
So there you go. So there's at least there are 5 showings out of 3 people. I'd probably go see it again, depending on what my work schedule's like. So if their plan is to just financially recover and get as many people in as they can and maybe in hopes build up some sort of new fans, have some people go out, but read the books, get it a bit more, maybe create new fans. I don't know. This seemed very, very safe, but like Tom said, the story was meh. But all I wanted for this to work, all it needed to work was awesome fight scenes, a lot of cameos, a lot of dick jokes, a lot of comic book jokes. We got them in spades. So I went in, came out getting exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
So for me, like if you were to look at the movie on its own, it's just the story just really isn't there. It's thrown together, but did we need the story to be something incredible? Not at all. So I was very, very satisfied. I feel like I definitely got my value for money.
Yeah, I agree with both your assessments. I think they're both very fair and measured. It's the story is, and this is what was interesting to me because again, the one thing you heard in the build up to this with Ryan Reynolds and Sean Levi, obviously the director kind of saying was, we said hands off Disney, and when you look at the end product, it is the story itself is very MCU, like to the point that like Ryan Reynolds is taking the piss out of it as Deadpool, like he's like holy MacGuffin when he sees the Time Ripper, but like it is still the exact same. And it's like we almost what I liked about the first two Deadpool movies was they kind of went a little bit against that. It's still a comic book story, and comic book stories have a formula, and look, it is what it is. Um, but they kind of subverted a lot of that and they put that to the background. Whereas when we got to the kind of meaty part of the third act where they're kind of, Deadpool and Wolverine holding hands and stuff like that as well, I'm like, all right, this is just an MCU movie. You know what I mean? This is just any MCU movie ever. And it's got that third act problem, like as all of them do. But again, disappointment is expectations not met, and I wasn't disappointed here because it was exactly what I expected and wanted it to be. I wanted it to be, and it made me think of wrestling. It's like a Royal Rumble, and that's how we compared it when we were talking a couple of months ago for what we wanted
I
out
was
of
just
this.
about to say, yeah, we've never compared these things to wrestling ever. This is a first for the podcast.
Yeah, but it's like, we said a few months ago, we wanted a Royal Rumble. We want like surprise entrance. We wanted this, we wanted that. You're never going to call a Royal Rumble the best wrestling match ever, but it can be the most entertaining thing. And that's kind of what they gave us. And the story was there to contrive those moments, and the moments landed. There was iconic imagery, there was great battles. If this was a wrestling show, it would be like a really well executed kind of Raw anniversary show. It's never going to be your favorite wrestling show, but like it's fun from start to finish. They kind of got the brief. They gave the fans what they wanted. There's loads of fun creative cameos. There's some iconic images that you remember, but you won't remember the actual storylines because they don't really matter here. That's not what this is for. It was interesting in that, like, kind of this is pitched as, and it is the only MCU movie, and it's pitched as kind of restructuring and rebalancing the MCU, but nothing changed in the MCU. Like this felt more like a tribute to the Fox movies, and don't get me wrong, that's not bad. Like there's I really enjoyed it, like, and especially having relived all those movies in the run up to this, I got really emotional in the end credits because I'm like, they're part of the family now. They were always kind of the awkward cousin they didn't acknowledge, you know what I mean? But now they're welcoming them home and they're bringing them in, and I appreciated the symbolism of that, and it was well executed. It won't be anyone's favorite MCU movie, I don't think. It's more a tribute movie, but it did what the brief was, and it was fine. It does feel a bit unsatisfying knowing that's the only MCU movie action we'll get from that story standpoint. Like the MCU hasn't moved an inch. It literally hasn't. It was completely parallel to everything that went on here, and that's frustrating because it felt like everything that happened in the world that's literally in this movie, but also literally outside of this movie dying. That this world is not affected and it's not going to continue, and that's where everything happened. So that is a bit frustrating, but we'll talk about that and we'll get into it. First off, I just want to get some like a snapshot of some of your highlights. What were the highest highs in this movie, Dan? What stood out for you in particular? What will you remember when you think back to Deadpool and Wolverine?
So early on in the movie, when we got a lot of the alternate Wolverines, there was one rumor which we discussed, which didn't happen, but I can see where they might have had it. Of course, when he meets the comic book accurate Wolverine, short Vereen. Like, come on, they had to have been place holding that for Danny DeVito.
Yeah.
You
Mm,
know, and we never got Danny DeVito, and the
yeah,
connection was there. Ryan Reynolds, and then you've got Rob McElhenney, then you've got Danny DeVito. Come on, 1 degree of separation.
amazing.
But we never got that. But I actually popped pretty heavy for the Age of Apocalypse Wolverine, which was one of my favorite
Mm.
picture of Wolverines, which was also in the '97 intro. We need more of him. Being a huge Henry Cavill fan, I heard the rumors but didn't believe them. That was awesome. But the thing I probably gashed at the most was Wesley Snipes coming back as Blade because I love Blade 1 and 2. I don't think there was a third one. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure there wasn't. But the thing that I remember the most that I wasn't expecting was how much I love Channing Tatum's depiction of Gambit. Okay,
Yes.
here's your next solo movie. God damn it, he was brilliant. He was
Yeah,
so good.
yeah, yeah.
So, like,
Amazing.
I mean, it was just the whole thing was great, but they were the standouts. Loads of little bits. Like I said, this was a movie made for me and my ilk. You know, my creed, my kin, whatever you want to call it. It was just for this very specific demographic of viewers, and they like were just feeding the spoon after spoon after spoon of just Marvel self-adoration goodness.
Yeah. Tom, favorite moments in the movie.
I think we're very much on the same wavelength here, Dan.
Yes,
A lot
excellent.
of the Wolverine, like all ones I thought were interesting. I
Mm.
really like the John Byrne suit. I was kind of actually looking at that and I was like, oh, I actually think that looks better than the suit we got for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
Um, Henry Cavill, that was a big pop. I actually did see someone on Twitter say, like, some scooper knobber was like, oh, this congrats to this guy who was right about the Henry Cavill news, and I was like, oh, so he's going to be something here. I actually thought he was going to be Patch, but no, he was kind of I mean, it's kind of disappointing in the sense that it means that Henry Cavill isn't going to be Wolverine, but then again, they're going to cast really young, I think, when they do Wolverine for the actual MCU. But I thought he was amazing. I thought the little dig at DC was fun there as well. We treat you better than those shit fucks across the street or whatever it is. Gambit was a kind of I kind of expected something because it was just like he's kind of been a punching bag. The Channing Tatum movie has been. So I feel like they needed to give it something, and I think this was the perfect platform to give him that. I'm assuming if he actually did Gambit, it wouldn't have been like this. But I think what we got was pretty good. As awkward as that headpiece looked, but I think when they do bring Gambit to live action, it's at some point. I think this is kind of like a little bit of focus testing, a little bit of tweaking, being like, okay, that looks ridiculous. Here's what we can actually do.
Mm.
I thought he was really funny. Yeah, I mean, as far as the rest of them come back, I think everyone is like Blade. That was awesome. I was the same. Which is like, oh, Jennifer Garner is here as Electra. It's like, okay, hi Jennifer Garner. Um,
Yeah.
but like Blade is the big one. And I say that made me disappointed that we didn't get Daredevil, because Daredevil is my guy. That's my hero. I actually like the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie, especially director's cut. I have a video of that on my channel. Check it out. Subtle plug. But outside of that, I think that was kind of the main things that I really enjoyed about it. I do feel like X-23, I feel, was a little bit squandered. I don't know if it was worth bringing
Mm.
her back. But yeah, I think I'm very much in line with Dan as far as what he enjoyed. Those are things that were my favorite as well. And I've had the exact same thought. I was like, damn, that could have been Danny DeVito.
Yeah, yeah, and like, yeah, extra injury is actually a good pickup because again, like we see her at the end, kind of having dinner with everyone, and they didn't answer the question. How did that happen? Like, I don't understand. Like, what happened there to make that happen? And it was just obviously a throwaway thing, and it would have taken more time than would have mattered. There were some other good movies. Like, I loved the Chris Evans moment, and I loved it because I got to experience it twice. One where like you hear the voice and it's instantly, that's Chris Evans. But and like I'm like, did they ruin it? Like, because have they made it too obvious that that's Chris Evans? Oh my God, like what the fuck are we gonna get? And then he jumps down, and then obviously you get the revelation that it's not Cap, it's the Human Torch in the best way. Like, because I did a little, like, when he took off the thing, and again, obviously you notice the hair, but it did take me a few seconds to kind of twig it. Again, I didn't watch the Fantastic Four in the build up to this. But it took me a few seconds. But the hair's a bit weird. Like he doesn't look like Cap, like, but whatever. Okay, maybe that's just a variant. And then like I did a little and then when it's brilliant though when I watched it the second time because you're like, the suit looks like the cap suit, the way they had it laid out. Like he had the little like red, white, and blue arm on it as well. Like, but he like has the logo, like his little kind of cover has the logo covered as well. Like, so it's done perfectly. And then in the second screening, when I knew it was coming, it was very fun to watch, because then that was one thing that did get a big reaction when he took off the hood, and then you're like, oh shit. And then everyone's like, oh, for fuck's sake. I thought that was absolutely genius. I loved like the lines where it was like, as soon as like they realize it's the Human Torch, he's just like, we don't know that guy. Brilliant. And then like when he died as well, it's like, oh crap, you know what he was doing to the budget. It was brilliant. Another thing I want to shout out is I loved the Deadpool brawl sequence. Like everything about that was phenomenal, amazingly directed, but also just like Van Wilder gently tapping the fourth wall. The proposal. It's like, that's not what we do. It got a huge pop in both screenings. Noiseville not having regenerative powers as well was a brilliant reveal. And then the mask reveal as well. And then like that they built it up so highly that the first time I watched them, like, this is going to be tough to beat. But then the fact that they went for it as kind of a Streets of Rage, almost video game style fight, just like kind of almost 2D, it was fantastic. But like then I watched it the second time, and there's all the little bits that you don't see and the little Easter eggs and stuff. Now it's not nothing major. There's no like massive revelations or anything, or huge Easter eggs to look out for. But just the attention to detail that was shown in each fight was phenomenal. But it felt like an arcade game, but just looking fantastic. And then it ended obviously with the iconic kind of Avengers Assemble style shot of the two of them jumping out of the bus. The only letdown for that, it was kind of Peter Ex Machina. I didn't really enjoy that part, and how that kind of was they explained away but they did have to get rid of the Deadpool core some way. So, you know, I can forgive it. And then the Fox tribute as well. I loved, and we've kind of already talked best cameos, but I also want to plus one. Gambit, again, just one of my favorite characters. And X-Men 97 just hammered that home emotionally for me. But he's never been done on live action properly. The one attempt they had at him was pitiful, and kind of more a sign of what the Fox X-Men movies got wrong and how they didn't understand the X-Men and what made them work. I loved the accent work by Channing. I loved how awkward he looked as it, you know, but that's Gambit. It's like you've nailed it. Like he looks awkward on television. The weird, like, what is it? Who's your dialect coach? The Minions? Brilliant. I thought he absolutely nailed it. But what I liked about it most was they weren't taking the piss out of Gambit. They actually showed like the first, and like I'm not messing, until I rewatched the X-Men animated series, I pretty much forgotten about Gambit. Like because I hadn't watched that since I was a kid, you know what I mean? Apart, and like again, his when he shows up in kind of the X-Men Fox movies, you're like, oh yeah, for you know, it's a non-event. But I recaptured my childhood love for him while watching it this year. And what I like about it was his powers are awkward. They're messy. They're very 90s cartoon like kind of show. But they captured how awesome he is. They really did. And I was like, that's why you can't do him live action. Because you're never going to get that. And they really got it as well. They didn't just shit on him. They didn't just make fun of him. You do have to make fun of Gambit a little bit because it's a ridiculous character, but it's a ridiculous character we all love, and they did him justice. And I'd be up for seeing that in live action. I'd be up for a solo movie. And X-Men 97 may have cracked open the door for that, like with how important they made Gambit. But let's talk about kind of the bigger stakes here. Kevin Feige has gone on record, and we've kind of already touched on this, and described this as up there with Infinity War in terms of stakes in the MCU. I did not see that. Dan, was there anything you were picking up here that like this is important for the broader strokes? Because when I read that quote coming into the movie, I'm like, we're going to see all the X-Men here. They're going to come in. We're going to see Beast. We're going to see Storm. We're going to see Rogue. We're going to see everyone come in. And we're going to see Xavier here. And this is how the X-Men come in. And again, like the film at the start seemed to set that up by setting up, here's the Fox universe. Here's 616. We got none of that. We got low, like they were we got Deadpool and Logan in the MCU, but we knew we were getting that going in. What were the stakes? Am I missing something here? What are you picking up from this, Stan? Is there anything?
No, I kind of twigged that towards the end of the movie as well. It was like I was so wrapped up in the enjoyment of the film, then I had that revelation about, "Hey, hang on, how is this changing stuff?" Because I suppose that the one thing I was disappointed in was that I felt that this was going to create some sort of events, like some convergence with some other kind that would allow them to come in. We got our teaser at the end of the Marvels. So then I kind of realized, like, around the old boy style fight scene, although I prefer your Streets of Rage reference, I have to say, I kind of was like, what is this doing for the story? And then I kind of realized how much they're not even stepping foot in the MCU that much. It's all been in the void, and like, and the purgatory they put it in is perfect. Like, it just went along while the MCU was going on, not really affecting anything. But at the end now, he's celebrating his birthday or finishing his birthday, whatever it may be, in the Sony verse, or sorry, Fox
Mm,
verse, or whatever verse he's in now. But that's the thing. It's like you had an opportunity here to, and all it would have taken was one character. Like, this the big unanswered thing that I'm looking forward to the most still is the Venom reference at the end of No Way Home.
yeah.
Why couldn't they have done the thing where, like, you have all these characters at your disposal, like the Fox version of Nightcrawler bamfed it by mistake through a portal. He's now in the MCU. Maybe like he has the ability to open portals, or he bumps into the Sanctum Sanctorum, and then he's got, like, you've got the like the whole Doctor Strange thing crossed over with a guy you could tell. Like, there's a million ways you could do it. Like, and that's just one thing that just kind of shot into my head really quickly. But what did it do for the MCU? Nothing. It
Mm.
didn't. The story is where we left it last. It's still just traipsing along.
Yeah. Nobody in the MCU knows anything happened here. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? Like the only person who has even interacted with it, and again, they didn't really answer this, but is Happy Hogan is the only person who's interacted with anyone, and it was kind of unremarkable on his side. And I don't even feel like, based off context, that he knew that Deadpool was coming from another universe. Like I don't feel like he knew about the multiverse at that stage.
We also
And
seemed
that
to know who he was, so I kind
yeah,
of find myself being a bit confused, and that's why I wanted
yeah.
a second watch. Because, like, do the Avengers exist in the Sonyverse, and we just haven't seen it because they just can't
Yeah.
afford it, or they're not allowed to say it, but it's been there. It's like, trust us, like suspension of disbelief sort of thing. So yeah, I was like, missed opportunities.
Like, and we can discuss all of that. Like, and like at one point, Logan goes, "Fuck the Avengers," and you're like, "Ah, it's the Avengers. Ah, something's going on there." But like,
Yeah.
we'd probably be putting in more thought than they did, to be honest, if we did. Like when Happy was like, "Oh, we'll be watching," and it's like, but this is pre-Endgame. Like you didn't know about time travel and or any of the multiverse, so that doesn't make sense. It was just like a thing that didn't work. So I don't know. It's tough. Some people I think are talking, Tom, about like the arch beings or anchor beings being something that's important. Do you feel that that's enough, or is there anything you're seeing
No,
for stakes here?
I I don't think I think the anchor being is like a convenient thing they made for this movie. Like the talk
Mm.
before this was Nexus beings, and that was kind of a figure that was kind of reverberated through all different timelines. I think anchor being is something that's kind of just convenient for the sake of this movie. I don't think it's going to be anything prominent going forward. That Feige quote is just full on hype machine.
Yeah.
It's that's all it is. This hasn't really like, and I know retroactively they could say, oh well, when they did this, it really affected the MCU. As to like Dan's point about why certain things weren't in it, I think that's kind of what I was saying when I said this movie is showing us a lot and telling us a lot by what it's not showing us. Like
Mm.
none of the X-Men are really in this, and there's clearly a big reason for that. Like I think eventually, the universe kind of big event, Secret Wars that we're presumably building towards, that's going to be bringing in the X-Men. That's going to bring in, more prominent members that they're leaving out here. I think that's when you're going to get all that happening. And I think one of the reasons that they're leaving the universes as they are, basically, because like when this is all over, it doesn't feel like much has really changed. Outside of a few beings being brought over into this Fox universe that Deadpool is in, is because I think we're going to kind of get a convergence in Secret Wars. It's going to be a little bit Crisis on Infinite Earths. I mean, the 2015 Secret Wars is how Miles Morales came into the regular Marvel universe, and I think that's what they're going to do here. It's going to be like, hey, we can bring in Deadpool now. But I think in general, it's kind of a weird conflicting idea, because this is both like, and this is why the stakes of the film don't feel major. It's because it's like, we need to save the universe, but we all know that this universe is doomed anyway. And with a film that's so based around meta and fans being clued in, that's why it doesn't really work, because we all know, yeah, they don't want to bring over that many characters into the MCU sacred timeline, because they're going to want someone else to take up the mantle of Wolverine eventually, because they can't hinge it on 55-year-old Hugh Jackman anymore. They're going to need to bring over new X-Men. They can't just say, hey, come on, James Marsden, now is your time. We'll finally do you justice. Like, it's weird for that reason. Is it as big as Endgame or Infinity War? Is it one of these big game-changing things? Absolutely not. No. And I think this, in that way, it kind of feels the same way that people felt about Multiverse of Madness. They were like, oh, we're going to get this and this and this. No, I think we're going to get that when we get to the next Avengers films. But I don't think this is going to have any real massive plot ramifications unless they retroactively write something in, like, oh, well, when you took this being from this timeline, it created, whatever world-ending calamity. But other than that, I don't feel like this has really any major implications, unless I'm missing something really obvious.
They're kind of victims of their own success in a way in the MCU now, because they market these movies, and you reference Multiverse of Madness, this was very similar. They're marketing these movies as Avengers style events, but then at the end of it, and Quantumania almost got this as well, and our disappointment in it was, and I think, to go back to your quote you said at the start, Tom, that this wouldn't age well, I think you're probably right. And the more we talk through it, the more holes we're finding in it, and so on. Although it is a very entertaining and fun movie, but I think that's the frustration that we have, in that they're promising us these earth-shattering consequences. It's like a Tony Khan announcement on AEW. It's like, oh, tune in for the announcement, and then it's like, we're gonna announce something at a bigger show, and that's the announcement. Like, what's going on here? It's like, what we saw here was what we knew we were going to see, and then we got some fun stuff thrown in on top of it. And again, if you just sell it as that, that's okay. But the problem is, the MCU is finding that selling it as their own individual entities is it is difficult and doesn't necessarily reap box office rewards. So it's tough. And there's, from a stake standpoint, they are victims of their own success there. Don't promise us Avenger style movies if you don't have Avenger style consequences to give. I think is the big takeaway here. We may have another special guest joining us now momentarily. We had a false start coming into the lobby there. We will have Kev Keen jump on shortly, so I want to catch up on his kind of feelings as when he gets a chance to jump on. But next, kind of in terms of like what's next and what happened here and what do we do with kind of what we're left with, Ryan Reynolds has kind of rubbished reports of a Deadpool 4, saying that he'd get divorced if he did. So he's saying it's just not happening, but it went kind of under the radar that at one stage Paradox said that Deadpool was chosen because he's important for some future purpose. And then at the end, like, you could kind of say, right, well, that's what happened in the movie. But then B15 said that we're going to need him in the future. Do you think we'll see Deadpool? I think we're definitely seeing Deadpool again in the MCU. This wasn't a one and done. Do we just think he's going to be an Avenger here, or do we think we're going to see Deadpool 4 based on this? Tom, where are you kind of feeling with this?
I don't know if we'll get another solo Deadpool movie, because I feel like this is kind of the one big chance, I think, of him bringing into the MCU is like the most exciting thing you can do with him. And I feel like next time we see Deadpool, there is going to be something kind of game-changing to the whole universe, which means that it would basically be like something totally new for Deadpool. I don't think they're going to do that. I mean, we're absolutely going to see Deadpool a lot, I would say. I mean, when Fox was bought by Disney, that was kind of the golden goose. Like, obviously, they wanted a chance to redefine X-Men and redefine Fantastic Four. But Deadpool was like good to go. You could just pick that up and run with it, and that's why that's the only character that we've really seen in a massive context, because like they're the highest grossing X-Men movies. People forget that Deadpool and Deadpool 2 are the most successful in the X-Men franchise. So like you take this character that was ready to run with, and that's what they're doing. And I think we're going to see Deadpool a lot. I think he's a character where you can get away with the fact that he's been R-rated now. All that swearing and stuff, all you have to do is like, hey, turn to the far wall. Oh, it's PG-13 Avengers movie, no swearing, blah. So I think we're going to get him like maybe having a kind of a loose arc over the course of some movies and cameos. I don't think we're going to see many. I don't know if we'll see another solo Deadpool movie. If we do it, I don't think it'll be for a long time. I think there's a lot of things they want to bring over. Like, I mean, like I'm surprised. I'd be surprised if they didn't bring over a character like Cable at some point. You know, and yeah, I feel like Deadpool is going to like, I think you could kind of give him like almost like Spider-Man's arc a little bit, which is, oh, he's going to become an Avenger. Even though there was a little bit of that in this, and at the end it seems like he doesn't care about that. The only thing that they kind of leave in the air, and again, I feel like they can come back to it or not, is the whole like, oh, that's Thor crying over my death. And I think in this it kind of worked to just set up the joke of him constantly dreaming about Thor. But it could lead to something. I don't think it necessarily needs to lead to something. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, they're going to make a lot of use of the Deadpool, because that's like the main way they can get cash back from the Fox deal at the moment, as far as Marvel goes. You know, Fantastic Four next year, we'll see how that goes. But Deadpool's like marketing wise, like Deadpool is such an easy thing. I mean, I think they're just going to have fucking Ryan Reynolds promote every Marvel movie from now on as Deadpool in costume, like nothing else.
Do we think he could even be, you know, like Dan? Could he be maybe a new kind of Tony Stark that he could show up at any stage? Like, because we are missing that anchor being within the MCU, you know, like, and someone who could just show up and make sense of it all. And again, like, that's a good way to get your movie likable, to have Deadpool show up, do a bit of meta commentary, and kind of be a cameo machine. And or is that a good use of Deadpool and time? How are you feeling about what's next?
Yeah, I don't know if he'll be to the level that Tony Stark was, and obviously Tony Stark was a catalyst for the story continuing constantly throughout the Infinity Saga. But with Ryan Reynolds, I think it might just be a way of like a Feige to kind of reel the fanboys in every so often. Even with the idea Deadpool could pop up, but I still don't really see how we get from where we are right now to where they want to be. This is another thing we discussed, that a lot of stuff happens really organically. I don't think anyone would have ever thought that Paul Rudd would be one of the fan favorites coming out of the Infinity Saga. Like, you know, everyone's like, you know, like the hype for him just blew up crazy. I mean, even to the fact that when I was working in comic books, Iron Man had essentially been killed off in the storyline because he wasn't making money. Being a lifelong Iron Man fan, one of my first ever comics, I was like, this would make a good fucking movie. And I was only able to agree with this to the people who would be in the shop buying those comics. To everyone else, like, who? Like, oh, the little kid and the big Iron Man, that's the fucking Iron Giant. And like, that's a conversation I've had several times with people who like should have known what they were talking about. But I don't know if, like, you know, he's gonna kind of be, excuse me, to that level. I think they're kind of trying to like push him into that Ant-Man sort of thing. He's gonna do that one thing at the end of Secret Wars that's gonna not make the good guys win, but start the process of the good guys winning. And they're forcing it. The thing about what we said is like all of this stuff that happened in the original saga was organic. The fans made up their mind. Fans are calling bullshit. That's not the Infinity Gauntlet in the first Thor movie. That was looked at. The ones became fan favorites, seemed to get a bit more attention. But for this, they're just riding by this across their fist and punching us in the face with it. And I do feel like that they're pushing Deadpool into this kind of very particular space that they created. So if they're kind of forcing it, no matter how much of a beloved character he is, he's not going to fit in. This review sounds quite negative, guys. We like the movie.
Yeah,
we're just nerds, okay? We're just nitpicking. This is our job. This is what we do. It's what we're born to do.
But I also think, no, I think what we and we've experienced this, Tom. We've done this a few times in particular,
Mhm.
where we started off coming in quite liking something, and then the more we discuss it, the more we're like, I don't think that I love that. But no, again, I think that's a caveat. And saying it's fun, we all came out and said it, but I think when you get into that's kind of the story of this movie, that when you get past the fun veneer, which again, there's only so much quotes you can throw back at things. And again, it did its job as that, but ultimately it's a bit toothless. You know what I mean? There's not much there. And I think that's a fair discussion. And I don't think that's representative of I don't think that's taken away from the experience of it. It's a Royal Rumble match that they promised would be a WrestleMania main event. You know what I mean? And that's ultimately, you are going to feel lacking in that, because Royal Rumble builds up to WrestleMania. You know what I mean? So I think that's kind of what we're kind of getting at. Logan is another one that's worth discussing, because obviously, what's next now? Like, again, I don't know. Like, this is what's difficult about where we stand, is that the sequel to this seems to be in the Fox universe that's dead. You know, and where do we go from here? Do we just recast? Do we get a Logan? Like, are we just supposed to be happy with our lot that we saw the Hugh Jackman Logan? It wasn't even a goodbye, though. It felt very much like we're going to pick up this story in the future, but I don't want, like, the purpose of this was this is where it gets really difficult for me, because I'm like, okay, you've told us we're going to see more Logan here. We now see him and Laura are coming together. It feels like a sequel they're teasing us with that they're not going to deliver on. Or did they just recast? Did they push the Henry Cavill button? Or did they cast younger, as we're already discussing? Dan, what are your thoughts on what's next for Logan within the MCU?
Um, Once again, probably a little bit over halfway through the movie, or well, to be honest, probably more towards the end. I was like, where is the passing of the torch that I assumed was going to
Yeah.
happen? You've got the storytelling mechanics for it. You've got the multiverse. You've got the timelines, and just like, yeah, then you can throw in a few things, sprinkle it on top of that as well. You've got loads of explanations. But yeah, where was that setup for the new Wolverine? Because if Photon in this other, which I'm assuming is not the Sony or Fox or any other verse, it's its own one that she found herself in at the end of the Marvels. I think that's going to be a universe we haven't seen so far, and that is a very handy thing for recasting some people, keeping some people the same. I mean, we obviously had Kelsey Grammer as Beast, but we could have done something where at least let it, like, we noticed other Wolverines out there. We didn't get many. They were all some iteration of Hugh Jackman, but there should have been something to bridge the gap between the Wolverine that we're gonna get and, like, saying farewell to Hugh Jackman, like giving him a swan song. And that was just another missed opportunity. I mean, they could still fix it, but I just the timing was perfect. The
Yeah.
opportunity was there, and if you have that passing of the torch done correctly, people are gonna automatically accept it. If you just get a few simple elements right. And once again, it's like you had that kind of thing after fact. I was like, why didn't they do that?
Yeah. That's the thing. They didn't shit, and they didn't get off the pot. Like, there's nothing.
They're
They
sitting
just
on the
left us
toilet eating a burrito and nothing's happening.
just waiting for something to happen, like waiting for someone to do something. But it's like, you're the people. You're the people who need to do something. Yeah, it's a really awkward limbo for Logan. Are you picking up anything here, or are you same page, Tom?
I think it's very deliberate they didn't do this. I think Marvel, and again, sometimes when I'm talking movies, I get, instead of being, artistic critic, I become Hollywood CEO. I take my Kevin Feige hat and plonk it on my head. I think they're going to bring a lot of those old Marvel characters back for Secret Wars. I think they're going to definitively kill them off, and then we're going to get a reboot of the MCU.
Yeah.
I think, like, the reason they don't kill off Hugh Jackman, and the idea of, like, a young Wolverine, X-23 is right there. And I think there's a reason why they brought her back for this. I think there's a chance that they might have her be the Wolverine in the MCU going forward.
The
Aside
fans
from
are
that,
definitely going to accept that.
Of course they will, because they're always very accepting of all people of
A
different
woman
races and
being
cultures and
recast as a
genders.
beloved character.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that'll
what
go
could
well.
possibly
It's
go
gonna work
wrong in
right.
their culture?
But look, it's a trap they seemingly are really always happy to walk into regardless, so you never know. But I don't know. It's at this point I feel like they need to kind of organically build up that Wolverine character again. And in some ways, it does them no favors to remind people of, hey, Hugh Jackman's really good as Wolverine, isn't he? Because, like, say for example, when they brought back Tobey Maguire for No Way Home, they'd already had Tom Holland up and running. So now being like, here's Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, or we're going to kill him off eventually. They can't just say, oh, and here's new Wolverine. They can't just grab one from another multiverse and say, here's the Wolverine for the MCU. It just wouldn't really work. So I think that there might be a while before we see another Wolverine in the MCU. I think that like the original X-Men team they're bringing to the MCU, I don't think that's going to have Wolverine anywhere near it for a while.
And you can
know?
do that in X-Men. Like, he doesn't need to
Yeah.
be a part of it. Like, if you consider even like the last few X-Men Fox movies, they Wolverine just wasn't there. And to be honest, you barely noticed it. It was a great lineup. You know, if you get the big hitters, if you get Scott Summers, Jean Grey, Beast, all the big names, then you're fine without it. Wolverine can sometimes
Yeah,
be
he's not in the original comic book lineup anyway when they launched
yeah.
it, and also X-Men First Class. He's a cameo in that film, but like
Yeah.
just do that, take that lineup at whatever way you want, like
He can be a distraction, as we kind of saw. One of the things that we constantly went back to in X-Men 97 is, where's our Wolverine episode? And it didn't need a Wolverine episode, but because he was there, we're like, you have to do something with Wolverine. So sometimes, yeah, that might necessarily be a bad thing. I think that's an interesting show. We got two new villains in this. We got Emma Corrin, obviously, as Cassandra Nova, and we got Matthew McFadden as Tom DeLorean, Mr. Paradox from the TVA. Thoughts on these two as villains, Tom? What did you think of these two? Did they fit in? Did they do the job? What were your thoughts?
Mr. Paradox was kind of disposable. He was basically just man in suit. I kind of had that both villains were kind of they were just served their purpose as much as they needed to, you know. And it was fine. I don't think like Mr. Paradox has had any real interesting motivation aside from, you know, just having a narrative purpose of destroying timelines and allowing them to kind of go on their venture. It was really just a character to hang a plot device on. As for Emma Corrin, I thought she was good. She wasn't given a lot to do, but I thought what she did with what little she was given was good. I thought she had a lot of kind of good mannerisms in the role, and that's an interesting character. I think, you know, the chances of us ever getting back to that character in the MCU are very slim anyway. But I thought that what she did with the role, she did a little with a lot. A lot with a little. There we go. She did a lot with a little. And you know, I feel like as a what everyone's going to remember is her putting her hand through people's heads. And that was a really cool, creepy visual. That felt like a pure like kind of Doctor Strangey, Sam Raimi, Evil Dead kind of thing, which I really enjoyed. But as a character and as a villain, there was not much to her, really. It was standard, like, oh, I'm going to take over the world, or oh, this world is going to be the real world. I'll be, you know, it's standard comic book villain of the week kind of shit. And you know, I think like it was an interesting dynamic to have her powers be kind of mental in that they didn't really have that physical altercation because they kind of couldn't. I thought that was an interesting dynamic, but doesn't necessarily make for the most interesting thing. I mean, I think that what really showed is that they had two villains that aren't punchy uppy villains. I think that's the only reason the Deadpool Corps had to be in this, aside from getting all those things that fans would like. They were like, they need to beat somebody up at some point and have it be satisfying. So I thought they were fine. I preferred Cassandra Nova to Mr. Paradox, but I don't think either of them were amazing. Like, I think in a couple of years we'd probably have forgotten the villains of these movies, you know.
And that's kind of the purpose, I suppose, of these type of movies. They were there to be functional rather than, you know, memorable. Again, there are some movies like, think of Quantum Mania. I know it's a bad example, but that was very much a Jonathan Majors vehicle. So it was like, we're gonna have Ant-Man and his family there because they don't matter that much, and we can really go all in on Kang here, although that didn't work out too well. For me, I thought Emma Corrin there was a lot of potential here, and it wasn't fully realized. Like I thought she was confused at the time. Was supposed to be kind of evil, mustache twirling, kind of almost Thanos level kind of danger, or was she supposed to be funny? And I thought they kind of tried to do both and hit on neither as a result. There was I liked the potential of her. I liked that she was cool at times. I liked the threat of her as well. That was established in a funny way when she just disembodied the Human Torch in a second, like, and that was that. I just also couldn't not hear Princess Diana in her and see it in her at times too, like, because she's her in the crown and she has that Diana voice that made her so effective in that. Matthew McFadden, I love him, and I think he fits this movie. And I thought kind of as well, he was functional. He wasn't there to. He was a ref in a wrestling match. He's there to be noticed when you want him to be noticed, and then get out of the way. And he needed to be funny, and he has that string to his bow. So I thought he did his job. And again, in a movie where the villains aren't supposed to be the center characters, I thought both were fine. Dan, I want to check in with yourself because this is actually something I don't know and I haven't researched because I'm going to be talking to me dad, it'd be grand. Cassandra Nova, twin sister of Charles Xavier, is that a movie invention or has she got a bit of backstory and lineage that again I just wasn't aware of?
It was a retcon when they decided to kind of go really dark with Charles Xavier in the comics. It was like, oh yes, you had a twin in the womb and she tried to kill you, and that was it. They kind of brought her back. God, I think, trying to remember the storyline it was in. It was, I think it was first, it was mid-90s, but I could be getting that completely wrong because she's a throwaway character. She's reared up now and then, but what you actually got on the screen was probably the best representation of her in any of the media she's appeared in. She was never really a character that any fans liked or gave much time to. She was always a kind of emergency rocket pack when they needed to do something. But I don't know, in the comics, like there's this constant fascination of trying to turn Charles Xavier into a villain. And it kind of never landed, and they always kind of went back, and I think that was another one of their attempts, and once again it didn't land. So for like, guys, okay, go into the file of acts of like villains that we can just kill off and no one's really going to give too much of a shit. They pulled out Cassandra Nova's name, and yeah, that was good. I mean, the one thing I really liked about her though was her power, like Tom said, was visually excellent, and with Charles being uh a telepathic and her being a telekinetic, I thought that was an interesting side of the coin. Um, one of my big things that I've always mentioned is I love very, very badly made 80s and 90s Japanese animation. It's not anime, that's that shit that came afterwards. But there was always this one terrible one, so bad it's good, called Angel Cop, and the character in it was called, the villain was called Lucifer. She could do that exact same thing that Cassandra Nova could do. It looked awesome in this late 80s animation. I always wanted to see it do it in real life, and they nailed it in this. So I was kind of loving the visuals behind her abilities.
Yeah.
But when it comes to Paradox, meh, he
Yeah.
did what he was supposed to do. I don't give really two shits. Any TVA agent could have filled that role.
Yeah. Yeah. But
Can I ask
also as
about
well,
one? Can I ask about one other villain that we're kind of forgetting about?
go ahead.
What did you think of Pyro in the film? And are you happy that that character was filled by Pyro? Because I'm not. I would have much preferred if it was a different character. I thought Pyro was kind of pointless.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like it's such a reach to kind of go. People will remember. People are nostalgic about Pyro. No, they're not.
Yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no.
I would have.
I did
Yeah,
like the fact that he kind of like screwed over Johnny Storm because I'm still really bitter about Sheamus being cast in a Ninja Turtles movie, Finn Balor becoming a Masters of the Universe action figure, and now that little prick from Essex, Johnny Storm's in the MCU. I'm not having it. I don't like that guy. We had a run in. They didn't get his accent right. They didn't get his hair right. They cast Chris Evans in him. No.
Very, very nice Irish pressing joke, but I appreciate that, Dan. I
Some
got
people
you.
regret that.
I think there's like probably about five of us, but they'll love it. But
That's
yeah,
really
no.
handsome.
um, yeah, no, I agree. And also like as well, shout out to Sabretooth and Juggernaut, who I thought were like they're great characters and kind of got a bit of a short shrift here. But again, like It is Deadpool and Wolverine, and a large part of it is to get out of their way and give us kind of what we want.
But
So
they actually had they apparently approached Vinnie Jones about reprising his role, and he was like not happy with the money, so he didn't come back.
really,
And then I was trying to look at all those characters that are like the henchmen when they arrive at her base, and I was like, at first I thought, oh my god, did they get like all of the people they couldn't get back to play characters? Because like one of them, so obscure. One of them is the Russian that is played by Kevin Nash in the Punisher movie. And I was like, whoa. And also video of that on my channel as well. So I'll plug. But yeah. So I don't know. I would have loved actually if Pyro was like the Punisher. If it was like Thomas Jane's Punisher, I would think it would have been awesome. But I know why they didn't, because it's bullets. And that's not really interesting. But there is like a reference to the Punisher as well, that the rocket launcher they uses from one of the Punisher movies. I thought they said the 89 Punisher, but it looked like the 2008 one to me, because that's a very memorable scene when Ray Stevenson as the Punisher blows up a man midair while he's doing parkour. But
Vinnie Jones, like, apparently beggars can be choosers. I know he's had his comeback this year with The Gentleman, but aside from that, I literally went onto his IMDb. Okay, in recent years, since like 2019, you've got such hits as Cross, Rise of the Villains, 2.0 on IMDb. I Am Vengeance, Retaliation. You could probably guess these titles. If you had to guess what Vinnie Jones movies were in, you could probably, like, these would be pretty good ones. Rise of the Foot Soldier, Origins. And then before The Gentleman, his last credit was
So good for the Soldier Origins movie. What the fuck?
Vinnie Jones joins Worlds of Tanks for Holiday Ops. That's a meaty title. But there you go. And he's saying no to Marvel. Look, it's his call. Like, that's okay.
I mean, they also had Bullseye there from the Fox Deadpool one, and it was a totally different actor. I was like, I would love to have heard the conversation with like, hey, Colin Farrell,
Yeah.
would you like to come back and just stand around there for a while? People would love it. They loved you as Bullseye.
Yeah. Do you remember, like, I know you're doing your own like DC HBO TV show, but could you do this really time? That I understand why he said no to that. That's fair enough. We have been very, I think, fair on this, but also not 100% sparked and positive. I want to give us one last chance to kind of throw in any lines or any funny bits that we haven't got a chance to talk to. For example, one thing I want to shout out, it was great. I loved the Wesley Snipes quote where it was like, there's only been one blade, there's only ever going to be one blade, followed by Ryan Reynolds' long look at the camera, which is really interesting when you actually dissect it, because you're like, is he looking because Mahershala Ali's coming, or is he looking because we don't know what's going on with that movie, or is it because that's Kevin Feige saying, correct, we're not doing the movie? Because that's a very touchy subject right now. Any other kind of lines or quotes or memories that you kind of want to shout out that we haven't got a chance to?
I could be wrong. I think Wesley Snipes might have said that or tweeted at one point when the movie was announced as well. He was like, "There's only going to be one blade." But I actually I had that quote as well. I also like where Wesley Snipes, Blade, sorry, is interacting with Deadpool, and he says something like, "I never like." He's like, "I don't like you." And he's like, "You never did," because obviously they filmed Blade Trinity together, and apparently rubbed each other the wrong way a bit. Although I'm sure they buried the hatchet by now. I did like the very knowing line when someone recognizes Wolverine and they say, Disney brought him back. They're going to make him do this till he's 90.
Yeah. And then constantly going back to
yeah.
till you're 90.
Till you're 90. Yeah. That was one of my favorites, right?
And then the fact that they kept him in was like, oh, that's true. Oh, they are. Oh, that's exactly what's happening. Dan, anything else you want to shout out that we haven't got around to mention?
The one that got the biggest pop was probably the literal and figurative breaking of the fourth wall with when he ran up to the camera in TVA and just
yes, love this.
Some kind of Disneyland, and then the headbutt. The cinema erupted for that line. Like in the one I was in, that was the one that by far got the biggest one, and I really, really liked that. No, I thought a lot of the kind of I love the Blade reference. That was great crack. Everything between Ryan Reynolds and Channing Tatum's gambit was gold. His I don't know if you've ever like interacted with someone from that part of the world, that kind of Cajun thick accent, and you always get the last line of the sentence. Always sounds like they're insulting you, but they're smiling. He nailed it. So just those back and forths were absolutely fantastic.
I wonder if there was, because there was one stage, and I think Ryan Reynolds said it. He was like, "Not a word," but I wonder, like, there was one thing where I'm like, I genuinely didn't pick up any of that, and I think it was just Channing Tatum speaking gibberish in that accent, and he's like, "Wada wada wada wada," and it was like, I
I
don't think he
really
even.
got vibes of the gardener from the Water Boy. Like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
you know exactly what they're saying, but none of it is English.
Yeah, agreed.
I think Electra had a good quote as well, only because it was very meta
Oh,
when she was like, they
yes.
were like, they were like, oh, I'm paraphrasing here, but she's like something like, Daredevil didn't make it, and it's like, I'm not that broken up about it. And you're
Yeah,
like,
no.
oh, oh yeah, I remember they met and fell in love and got divorced.
Yeah. What was it? No, a Daredevil didn't make it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Don't be. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
that's
brilliant. That was
it.
brilliant. Yeah, of course. Anyone who doesn't get it, Jennifer Garner, Ben Affleck. There you go. Guys, last thing, just to wrap up on this. I'm not going to be too strict with this when we talk about rankings, but it's something that we all, as fanboys with shelves, naturally do. Where does this rank for you? And you can take that however you want. If you want to rank it within MCU movies, if you want to rank it up against the Fox movies, where's this kind of fall in now that you've had time to watch it? We've had this discussion, and this is something that I'm genuinely figuring out in real time, because I had something when I came into this, and I'm like, I was looking at, I actually have like Letterboxd and IMDb rankings, and I was looking at it, I'm going, I actually think I've got to change this. So, where's it feeling for you, Dan?
So I'm gonna go for ranking it pretty much very loosely in this saga, to which it would rank pretty high. I mean, thinking back real quick, I think it's gonna like No Way Home is still gonna have the number one place, and it's gonna be hard for that to be knocked off its pedestal.
Mm,
This one will come a lot higher than a lot of stuff because the thing about comics, and we've made this reference before, is these aren't superhero movies, which I would say something like The Dark Knight was. It revolves around the mythology of said superhero. These are comic book movies, and comic books most of the time are a little bit shit, especially with the way they're constructed nowadays. It is kind of like the movies. January to October is a build towards big event, and then you get a big event at the end of the year. So to be a genuine fan and to support this, you need to wade through a lot of shit. And we've really kind of seen that part of the comic book world manifest in the last few movies, TV shows, all the media we've consumed. There's been some absolutely fantastic stuff, like obviously X-Men '97, which Spider-Man, but then there's been some absolute drivel. Secret Invasion being the one. It was bad, but it being bad wasn't even its problem. It's the fact that it was just pointless. It didn't
mm.
do anything. Whereas at least this might have not done something. We got through it. But this is a movie, and I think my ranking's different to yourself, Jer. I think of like, how many times am I going to rewatch this?
Yeah.
And we had an Infinity War Endgame impromptu marathon last week when I was off work, just because we felt in the mood for that movie. But there's so many things I just don't go back to. And then sometimes I go, why do I want to watch this again? I'll stick it on and see why I wanted to watch it. But this is going to be one of the ones where nothing's on TV. We're after getting a takeaway. Deadpool Wolverine's perfect for tonight. I could see myself saying that every couple of years down the road. So for me, in this in this segment of the movies that we're in right now, it's gonna be relatively high for me as a rewatchable movie, but nothing I'll go back and try and analyze and pick up and stuff from. It's just gonna be mindless bubblegum for the brain.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I'd also rank rewatchability as quite high. You know, that'd be quite important to me, because ultimately that's what it comes down to. And like, for that reason, in MCU movies, Infinity War and Endgame will always be one and two, because they're the ones that I find an excuse to come back to at least once a year, because they're so good. So for me, I'd probably put it, like, I looked at my MCU rankings, and these need a redoing very swiftly. I have Thor: Love and Thunder is actually doing quite well, and I don't stand over that. Like, not even the casting that stand over it anymore. I'm looking at this, and I'm like, I put it around kind of Captain Marvel area. Do you know what I mean? And I quite like Captain Marvel, so that's not necessarily an insult. I know people might take it that way. Um, but again, I can see myself constantly coming back to it, but it's always just going to be as a popcorn watch, where I'm like, I want to throw it on the background, I want to laugh. I'm looking forward to it being on Disney Plus because I can see it being something that I do, but I'm not going back to it for quality. Like, I think. See, the problem is with this as well, like, and this does affect your rewatchability. If I am going back to a movie for that and I've got a couple hours to spare, why not watch Deadpool? Why not just watch Deadpool, which is done much better, you know? So I think I probably will end up going back to that quite a lot if I'm in that mood. But I think it's fine. I have it around Captain Marvel, Black Widow. If you were to rank it kind of among the Fox movies, you know, I put up my rankings on Twitter there earlier this week. Logan, Deadpool, Days of Future Past, Deadpool 2, the Wolverine. And then I go First Class and then the original trilogy. I'll go to this before I'd watch First Class again. And First Class isn't a bad movie, but I think this is just more fun. But I'm always going to go to that top five. If I'm looking for the best of the best of this world. Tom, what are you feeling about Deadpool and Wolverine? How's this kind of fall into your internal rankings?
Yeah, I mean, going off the Deadpool rank, just the Deadpool movies, it's probably my least favorite Deadpool movie.
Yeah.
I really think they kind of sacrificed something that was nice about the Deadpool movies, in that they did feel kind of preserved and avoided and away from everything, and they had a kind of a nice personable story, and this doesn't have that really. As far as the X-Men movies, I it's lazy to just say in the middle, isn't it? Our rankings are very different. By the way, I would say I would put First Class quite high. Yeah, I mean, like it's probably about the level X-Men 1 would be at, which was good when it came out, but I also think now it's kind of shown its age a bit. There's a lot of good things about it, but I think, you know, I don't think this is going to hold up, you know, 20 years time like the first X-Men does either. But when it comes to the MCU, that's really tough. I think it's probably like, it's definitely like not like, if this was in the first 3 phases of the MCU, I think it would be really sticking out as not great. In the fourth MCU, it's probably like high average, maybe. Yeah. Like I think it would be below a Shang-Chi, it would be below No Way Home. Yeah, I mean, it's not. I would just say it's average across the board. When it's put into any real competition, it's probably somewhere in the middle. For the Fox ones, it's probably high average. For the MCU as a whole, it's maybe low average. Yeah, it's not great. And as far as coming back and rewatching it, I don't think I'm going to rewatch it that much, outside of maybe seeing like something mindless, something fun, something I can turn my brain off to. It's a good background movie, I think, and that's not really a glowing endorsement. So
that's fair. That's Deadpool and Wolverine, guys. An interesting conversation, and again, I think we're objective and fair. I'm happy with that discussion. I think we gave called out the positives, but also highlighted anything that wasn't there. Tom, we're gonna let you go because we want to discuss House of the Dragon, and I don't want to give you spoilers if you ever do decide to finish it all. But before we go, I want to give you a chance. I know it's a busy time over on the Pop Go Pod.
Yeah, well, I've already plugged a few things during this, so subtly, I know you didn't notice. But so I do want to plug a video that currently isn't out yet. I have my X-Men Origins Wolverine video. It's currently being held in YouTube jail for copyright reasons, which I'm pretty confident will get overturned, and hopefully be with us soon. So like and subscribe because you don't miss that. It's an hour-long retrospective of the film itself, how the film came to be, what went wrong, and what happened next. If you do want a taste of it, I put up a 5-minute video from that video, just about how we ended up getting a Deadpool movie, despite the fact he was so horrendous in X-Men Origins, that you can check out. There's also just a lot of stuff that was touched upon in the Deadpool and Wolverine stuff. I've done reviews of all the Fantastic Four films. I've done reviews of all the Punisher films. Maybe I'll do the Blade movie someday if that movie ever happens, so I probably never will. But yeah, aside from that, just check out the channel. There's going to be a Deadpool and Wolverine review going up there as well. That'll be a bit more concise once I have my thoughts gathered. This has really helped in that regard. So yeah, Pop Gold Pod on YouTube, all on my socials. Like and subscribe on YouTube, and give us a follow wherever else. Yeah.
We're also due a catch-up, actually. I just thought of it. July at the movies, we need to discuss that. So keep an eye out for that over the next short while. Tom, always a pleasure. At PopGoPod on all socials. And also, if you want to subscribe on YouTube, I'll have the link in our episode description. Tom, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us on the
Deadpool and Wolverine quote. Bye. Goodbye. Quote.
It was perfectly cut.
Amazing, amazing. I didn't think he was going to leave so quickly. That was fantastic.